Hi.
Hello. Hi. Hi everybody. It looks like we are live. And thank you for joining us. If you're joining us here, we got off to a little rough start because we had some technical difficulties on the new system. But I am Laura Stinchfield, the vet psychic, and joining me today is my best friend Kimberly Klein, who is an intuitive counselor.
Hi.
And and we thought that we would talk a little today about surrendering into communication, meaning that when you feel like you are going to communicate with spirit or another animal and you want to receive that information back, how do you do that? Like, how do you surrender into that? And what does that feel like? And what are some of the things that you should think about while you're doing that? Do you have anything to say about that, Kim?
Yeah, I think that this is where a lot of people, when they're learning and continuing to learn as they mature into this world of spirit, get stuck. Because I know that surrender, some people, I know you think surrender, I'm giving up. But no, it's not a giving up. It's like giving to or giving in, but not giving up. And it's hard because it's a strange word. And you're like, how do you surrender? So I think this is a good topic to talk about.
Yeah. So some of the things that I should say about it is like when I do it in my business or let's do like one way that you can surrender even like before you even start communicating. I like to kind of talk about this when regards to like seeing a sign from spirit. Some people like spirits who've passed away can give us signs. Like some of them
Mhm.
can be just like a memory in our mind. That's like the number one way they can let us know that they're around us is by placing a memory in our mind and then wrapping themselves around us, and that will bring us to emotion. But a lot of people don't recognize that as actually a communication from their loved one on the other side. They feel that memory so strongly, but then they go into the feeling of separation and the feeling of loss because the mind sort of hijacks it. They don't realize like, oh, this is actually like a spirit or my loved one giving me the
Mhm.
memory and telling me that they still love me and they too remember our good times. And then other ways that they can let us know, or just like the flashes of the pictures. You can hear it as a little voice in your head. It could be your voice or it could be someone else's voice. It could be just a sense of knowing, like I just kind of feel like they're around. I just kind of feel like they're here. Or it can be something outside of yourself, like you feel like tingling sensation on your body, or you feel like
Mhm.
a physical touch. Kim has actually had that with her daughter. She's actually grabbed her wrist, and her daughter's on the other side, and actually touched you. Or it could be things completely outside of yourself, like the sun coming out of the clouds or the wind picking up and blowing or a bird or a butterfly, or coins or repetitive numbers like numbers on a clock or repetitive numbers you see on a receipt or a license plate. I mean, there's like infinite numbers of ways, right? Electrical things with electrical, finding coins, could be anything, songs on the radio. What happens when people get these signs, they know innately that it is their person. There's something different about it. And usually when there's a sign from spirit, you all of a sudden become like ultra present. It's almost like time warps and you're just like super focused. And even the atmosphere looks a little bit different if you're really sensitive to it. But you just feel like, wow, like there's 1111 again, or 333, or oh, wow, look at the wind. It's so beautiful right now. Or wow, look at that butterfly. And you just are like immersed in that moment. That's usually when it's spirit driven, not just like when you just see a butterfly and something else is going on, you're thinking something else.
Mhm.
It's usually like hyper focused. Um, so when that happens, like when you have those moments, a lot of people know that it's their loved one. They'll be like, oh, my grandpa, he does that sign on the clock, or my brother sometimes puts that thing on the radio, or, oh, when I find a feather, it's my deceased pet, my deceased cat, or for me, my white butterfly is my late cat, Makia. So when you see that, what most people do is they see it and they're like, oh, that's them. They kind of believe it, but then they don't surrender into it. And that's when I feel like the surrendering should come, when you have a little inkling of like, huh, that might be my cat Makia. Like when you feel that, then go, huh, okay, go into your heart. And when you're up in your heart, you bring your awareness, your frequency, or your breath, whatever you want to call it, into your heart. And then from that space, then go, oh, like, Makia, is that you? Is that you that's here? And kind of like sit back like you're on a movie chair seat, or you're like resting at the end of the day, or you're going to have a glass of wine or a beer or whatever it may be, or sink into a tub and just see what else comes. Like you might feel like all of a sudden this energy pressure around you, or you might have one of those other symbols of that happen, like the wind picks up stronger, or you see something in your head. But if you don't take the time to say, okay, that might be you. Now, I get it. A lot of people are like, I don't trust it. I don't know if it's them. It's not that material. What do I do? Well, just give it to them. Like if you kind of think it's them, say, okay, Makia, if that's you, I'm going to give it to you. Or my deceased brother, or Talia, or whoever it may be, I'm going to give this to you. And then surrender into it and be like, huh, what else can happen? And play with it, because people are so attached and they're like trying too hard, and they're like, okay, like if it's the wind, like this is something you don't do. If it's let's say the wind just picks up, don't test them and be like, oh, the wind again. Now I did it, right? And then you're just waiting there and you're like, sometimes the wind blows, sometimes it doesn't blow. But if you think about it, it takes an extraordinary amount of energy for them, for a spirit to actually create that sign. Like they have to literally blow the wind, right? Or literally communicate with a butterfly to get it to come in my direction, or like somehow make a feather appear, or a coin, or whatever it is. So try not to test them. You can use that as like, oh, that's our sign, so that when they are able to do it again, they can repetitively do that, and be grateful and say, thank you for that. I'll watch out for those more often. But instead, like I said, sort of go back and be like, just be still and just play and be in wonder and be like, I wonder what else will happen. And just explore it and pay attention to what's going on in your mind, what's going on in the air around me, what's going on inside my body, and just experiment with what you are experiencing, which I think a lot of people have a very hard time doing naturally anyway, because we're so focused on 30-second Instagram or whatever it may be, or reading an email and getting it out, or a short text message and getting it out. We're not used to just relaxing and settling in, and that's what people really need to start doing.
Yeah, to go back one step, when I was first learning about the signs I was receiving, and I think this is important for people to know, because I'll get questions about this, like, is that a sign? Is that a sign? Just because the example is hummingbirds for me. Obviously, hummingbirds are important because that's how I was initially given signs from Talia, was through hummingbirds. But not every hummingbird that I see is a sign. And so people have to know that.
Wait, stop for 1 second. Let's just tell them who Talia is, just in case they don't know you yet.
Yeah. Talia is my daughter, who 14 years ago died in a plane crash with her dad in Panama when she had just turned 13. And from right after we realized she was gone, because it was like a 3-day search, it was horrible. Then she started reaching out and physically touching me, and then it just evolved into communications. And so that's who Talia is. And one of her first major signs when I got home from Panama was this hummingbird, which is how I named one of my books, Hummingbirds Don't Fly in the Rain, because the hummingbird was like outside my window staring at me intently, flying in the storm. And then I acknowledged it. And then when I went outside, that same little hummingbird was dead on my porch. And that was so sad. But you don't walk out the door and find a dead hummingbird sitting on your porch. So it was a confirmation. So, but it's things that are out of context. So like I said, I mean, in the spring, if we see a million hummingbirds, they're not all associated with Talia. And so if it's out of context, if the hummingbird flies right to me, stops and stares at me, well, that's not normal. So that's an out of context. So people have to know that not every feather that they find floating around is going to be the sign. But if there's not any other feathers around and then they stop, think about something and look down, there's the feather, that's possibly the sign, because it's not normal. It's out of context. So the butterflies,
there's an extra energy to it when you find a feather like that. Like you're
yeah.
like, whoa, a feather. Like when I find like owls send me feathers a lot. And like if I find an owl feather, well, actually for me, owl feathers usually mean like somebody's got a secret that I gotta know about, like, and it's gonna come out. Like it's a warning, like somebody's betraying me and it's about to show up. But when I find them, it's like, oh, like it's weird. It's like all of a sudden, like I'm walking down and I'm just like guided to it. It's like, or I just like look up and then there it is. It's not, I don't know. There's a different energy about it when I find it. Then just kind of you stumble upon something. There's more of a focused energy.
And when you see it, a certain thought will come to you. And so, versus if you just see things and you're just blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Exactly.
It's the energy.
There's an intentional thought that also accompanies it. And your mind isn't still kind of in its monkey self where it's going over and over again.
Exactly. And that's like another sign. Sometimes I will get certain Talia's favorite songs on the radio. But, it's not like I'm going and listening to every station to find it. It's like if I turn the car on and the song's there, or if I turn the radio on and I just flip one station and the song's there. It's different than every time the song comes on. It's not it. But if it happens on its own, then I feel it in my body, and I know. And sometimes I'll just burst out crying, and it's not a memory cry. It's an energy feeling her. It's intense. It's an intense thing. It's like, I can't even explain it. It's deep.
Yeah, that's so important that you mentioned that too, because the crying is interesting, because what I feel like happens there sometimes is two different things. It's like they can come in and they can give you a message or give you a memory or something, and you start to cry, and it's because you feel the energy, you feel them so strongly, and you feel the energy of them so strongly that then you burst out into tears, and your mind thinks like, I cry when I'm depressed. And so then you get depressed and go down into the separation. Like you bring yourself back down to that feeling of separation because she's not there. But I also feel like sometimes we cry when that happens is because their frequency is going so fast and spinning so fast that when it hits our frequency is like, oh, we have to release because we are not speeding that fast. And so it hits us at the core, and then we release and we're crying, and it may not be an emotional cry. It may actually be an energetic cry.
Totally. And that's a really good explanation of that. It's like the clutch on your car, and it hits the gear, boom, you're right, because it can't be emotional. It is energetic. If it happens just out of the blue, boom, it just shows up, start bawling. That's not emotional because there was no thought to it. It's just, it's the energetic cry. That's amazing.
Yeah. Like just one other thing about crying and like feeling them, and this is with animals and people. So if people know that feeling of when they first lose someone, or that they're in that mourning state, and they're like curled up in the fetal position, or they're like, you know, that kind of kid cry where you're like, you know, that like horrible cry. What happens sometimes, if you've ever noticed, when you're in that crying, all of a sudden you'll just stop crying.
Yeah.
And you'll just be like, oh, and you start to kind of snap out of it. And you're all of a sudden like looking outside of yourself in a way. You're kind of waking up again, right? And I feel like the reason why you've all of a sudden stopped is because they've rested their spirit on top of you. They're really trying to hug you and comfort you. And your nervous system has picked it up, but your mind doesn't make sense of it. So you all of a sudden are like, oh, okay, like I'm stopping to cry, and you're like coming out of it, but you're not recognizing, oh, I'm snapping out of it because they're here, because they're touching me.
That's amazing, because it's the same thing if they were there and say the kid is freaking out, crying, hysterical, and all of a sudden the mom hugs them and they stop. It's the same thing. It's just the spirit.
Is.
That's amazing.
It's just the spirit, right?
Yep.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So what also I think is important to think about is kind of like how, like when it comes. So I use this analogy a lot. Like I feel like it has to do a lot with like surfing. I always think of it as like surfing. So like you're out in the ocean, and you know there's sets. Anyone who's surfed, you know, like there's sets that come in, and then there's a lull, and then there's like another set that comes in. Well, you're out there waiting for the other set to come in, and you kind of can feel it coming, and it can be a little like, especially if you know the waves are big, and you're like, you know, I always get like a little like, whoa, like I can feel like the energy of the ocean, and it kind of draws you, and you kind of like, oh, okay, it's coming, like I feel it. I feel like spirit is often like that too, or hearing it from the animals, whether they're alive or deceased, or hearing it from a deceased person, or even like a higher self or an angel or whatever you want to, whatever your fancy is, fairies or whatever. It's like it comes, and then you get to this point where you're like up on the crest of it, and you have this choice. Like, do I paddle and catch the wave? And when you decide that, there's also like you might wipe out. Like if it's a big wave, you might wipe out, but you might really catch the wave and really surf it. Or do I pull out? And it can be this uncomfortable feeling. And I think what happens is like people see a sign, and then they think of their loved ones, and they start to surrender. They start to write or video journal, or just even sit down and think or paint or whatever the medium is. And then they feel like they're at that top, and they pull out. They go and they check their phone, they go do the laundry. And when they really need to dive in and surf it and see where it goes. And I always say, like, stay a little bit longer than what you think you want to stay in. Like, okay, like I'll even do it sometimes when I'm not working. I never do it when I'm working, but when I'm not working and something's going on and you just got a busy day, like I'll feel something coming, and then I'll think like, God, I want to do this now, or I don't, but yeah, like do it and see, like it could be a real miracle experience. You can have really phenomenal experiences when you open yourself up to that and actually surf the wave.
That's amazing.
And then for some reason, it's like surfing too. You dive in, you surf the wave, and then like you don't get it, like something happens, like I don't know, like the phone rings, or like your head's just too busy and you don't get it. So what? You get back out there, and you do it again. Like it's not
That's good advice. Just keep doing it, because at some point
it's like
you'll
with
just do it.
with anything, like at some point you'll end up getting better at it.
Yeah. I know when the surfing analogy is really good, but when I go inside, surrender to myself, basically, I envision that I'm like falling down or going down this elevator down really fast to where my body feels it. And I feel as I go, I feel it. And if I let it go, I can go deep. And then if I think, okay, am I there yet? And it's like stopping at all the floors. And I don't want to push all the buttons and keep stopping until I get where I'm going to be. I want it to just go. And so sometimes
Interesting.
I can let it go. And sometimes
Yeah.
I'm like, am I there yet? Am I there yet? You know, even though I
Yeah.
physically feel that in my solar plexus.
You feel like you're going, like are you grounding yourself? You feel like you're grounding yourself in a way? Or are you going
Well, I'm
deep in almost
grounded.
like a portal inside of yourself?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's like a portal inside myself, but I'm
It's
grounded.
like that's the radio station is inside somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Some people have to bring it up to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people go down, some people bring it up, some people go out, you know, and you just kind of have to find like what's good for you, you know, and that's why everyone is different. You just like, what is your surrender? What does that feel like? And that's something you just have to practice, you know, and then once you practice it enough, then you start to realize, okay, if I go here, then I feel that. If I go here, then I feel that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of my spiritual teachers, he says, and I totally believe this with the feelings I get, that every emotion has a feeling, and every thought has a feeling, and you can feel it, and so you use that feeling as the map, or basically it's like the GPS, and you don't have to like drive there. It's like you get that feeling, boom, and you're there. Your intent drives you to that feeling, and you boom.
Your
you get to that feeling.
intent, that's a good one too.
Yeah,
Like it's so important to have clear intent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't have clear intent, then the spirit world isn't going to know what you're asking
What you want.
or what exactly.
Yeah. And with clear intent, like I do it even before like every session, like I just ask that I have like really clear communication and that everyone feels good with the communication. And then I'll like put it out to my spirits, teachers and guides, like whoever can like watch over us to make it a clearer communication.
Yeah.
And like you can do that too, like your ancestors, whoever it is. Like I don't even have like a particular guide in my head when I say that. It's just like I just want the best, the highest possible spirit or the highest possible dimension of awareness to be watching over our communication and making it clear. So just having that intention of clear communication is important. Which maybe I should also bring up, like about like a lot of people are worried about like surrendering in and something negative coming in. And in some ways, I want to tell you, like, don't even worry about that. And in other ways, I want to tell you that can be a thing for sure. But if you have boundaries in your life naturally, like if you have boundaries in the way people treat you, if you're a clear communicator, the way you are in your life, you're not going to have a problem in the spirit world. It's like it's already kind of set in your system. But if you feel like there's something dark out there, it really is the simplest thing just to draw in that intention and say, I just want clear communication and I want to be protected and guided. And then that's all you have to do. If there's like a little part of you that's like, I'm haunted, bad things always happen to me, there's bad spirits, things are attached to me, you're going to bring in those little like lower entity little beings that might bother you, but I just really don't think the majority of the people have to worry about like anything negative. I think people who have to worry about something negative are like the ones who are like ghost hunting or like playing with the Ouija board in weird places. I don't know. I just don't think you're going to need to worry about that in everyday life.
You know how that little, some people have in the back of their head, there is evil, there is this, and that, those little thoughts, it's basically like where your intention goes, the energy flows. So like, you just have to learn, just don't even think about it. Don't go there. Don't acknowledge it. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Boom.
Doesn't exist.
There's an exercise that I did in one of my classes years ago. And what we would do is we would have a partner and we would hide off a path. And then we'd project ourselves to a different spot. So to try to get the person to look for us where we're projecting, not where we really are. And when you're going on the path looking for a spot, I'd be like, oh, that spot, that spot, that spot. Oh, I'm going to go there. The first spot that I would think about is always, it happened to be the spot that the partner would go, I think you're there. And it's like, I vetoed that spot, except my energy stuck there because I thought about it first.
Oh,
And
so it would go to your first spot? That's the first spot where they thought you were? Oh,
yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
I know. It was a good lesson to really
So when you would
watch
put
your
it
thoughts.
there and then you would put it somewhere else and then he felt like you were there. Yeah, but but you also were learning tracking. So maybe he's tracking you. And maybe that's
it was spirit tracking, but it was a spirit tracking with faking him out. Okay.
No, I know, but I mean, maybe he's spirit tracking you to the first place, and then if you throw yourself somewhere else, if he kept doing it, he'd find you at the second place.
Totally. That's
like you think you'd be moving.
That's a more advanced thing.
That's more advanced. Yeah.
Exactly. But and it totally is true to do that.
Yeah.
But for lesson number 1, watch where your thoughts go.
Don't put your energy there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because then if the person's good, they'll track you, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got other things to say. Yeah, I have other things to say, but that's like another podcast. It got me off into
we can talk for about 4 years straight.
I know. Kim and I, this is what we do like all the time. All day long.
Yeah, that's true.
Not all day long, but like when I'm walking or when we're talking. Yeah, a lot. So fun. Well, I think that is like enough information, right? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah. People have to start somewhere.
Yeah, they got to start somewhere, and just to sort of like relax into it and to believe, really, like to trust that, well, your animals can hear you too. I mean, a lot of these people are watching me because they want to talk to alive animals, and it's the same with alive animals. Like, you just got to surrender into it, sit down and kind of see like the same thing, like what's popping in my head, what do I see, what do I feel, and start to get to know yourself. The more you get to know yourself, the more you start thinking about what am I thinking and feeling at any given moment, then you're going to know if something else pops up. Like, you're going to know, okay, I think this way. That's a different way than I think. Like, what is that about? Yeah. Or my body feels this way. I have an injury here. And like, why do I feel it on my other shoulder today? Like, maybe because your pet or your kid or your grandma or your mom or something has the pain on that shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, again, I'm Laura Stinchfield, the Pet Psychic, and you can check out my website at thepetpsychic.com. I got a bunch of books out and a meditation CD. You can find them on Amazon. Just Google Laura Stinchfield or the Pet Psychic and all my stuff will come up. And you can find the links on the website too. And Kim, why don't you tell them about where your stuff is?
Well, you can find information and my books on KimberlyKlein.com. Also Amazon. I have the book about the story of what happened with my daughter, How Many Birds Don't Fly in the Rain. And her communications, I have a few books out, and one of them is a collection of all of her communications in one book. And you can find it. It's called The Universe Speaks, The Heavenly Dialogue, and that's on Amazon or any bookstore, really.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. And I didn't do the best job at manning the chat, but as we continue, we're going to do more of these. And as we continue to do them, I'm going to be watching the chat more, and we'll get better notice out about when we're going to do these lives. Right, Kim? We should do them more often. It'll be fun.
We should. It's so much fun too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, you guys, go talk to the animals and listen to spirits and trust and believe.
Have a good day.